I wonder, as a head teacher, have you ever felt lost? Here's the thing. I know for many school leaders, head teachers, MAT CEOs that we work with, they'll come to us and they'll say, Viv, there's all this advice everywhere to reconnect with my why. And often my response is, yes, it's easy to connect to your why when the sun is shining. It's much harder when the storm clouds are gathering. And so I want to share with you a small reflection that we use with head teachers that we work with to help them connect to their whys when the storm clouds are gathering. To begin with, I want to share a little bit of my own story. Some of you may be familiar with my story, but I just share a little bit here because it's important in terms of this connection to our why. One of the things I learned as a young head that reconnecting to my why was not a one-off activity. I had to learn to reconnect to my why time and time again. There was a key incident when I found myself crying in my car after a very, very challenging and difficult meeting with a parent. And it was through that pivotal experience that I began to realize that for us as head teachers, we needed specific reflective tools to really help us keep onto our why and to reconnect time and time again. And I'm going to share with you one of those reflective tools that we use within integrity and that I really turn to myself as well when I'm going through challenging times. This one I call the 3 Ps. And if you think about it in terms of P number one being your purpose, why you stepped into headship in the first place. What was it that called you? Very often I will say that called you from within. Then when we're going through these challenging times, we have to find a way to engage with the pain. And I'll come to that in a moment. But as we go through this 3 point reflection process, we'll come to a place where actually we reframe what we've been through. There's a new perspective, a new point of view. Because what's really important when we're going through these challenging times is to recognize that when we're trying to find a way forward, what we need is a compass, not a map. The compass being a connection to our purpose, recognizing that our purpose doesn't hand us a step by step directions. It doesn't do that. You'll know that with every challenge that you go through. And when you come back to your why, hopefully you will have deepened in your sense of purpose. So, what we're talking about here is as we go through the challenges of school leadership, finding ways to reconnect with our purpose that give us a deeper sense of self and a deeper connection to our why. So, hope you've got a pencil and a piece of paper, because here's a quick reflection on how to use those 3 Ps. So, purpose. What called you into headship in the first place? And I'd really encourage you to write it down. It can be a few bullet points, it can be a whole paragraph, but I know this is essential. Second one is pain. What has tested or diminished you? And it can be in relation to a specific incident that you might be having to deal with right now, or it could be just generally. In my latest book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, I spend a lot of time, well, there's one sort of particular chapter that provides some questions for individuals to think about and to go deeper around this aspect of pain. And I'll just share a couple of them now. One question might be, what questions are arising from within you that you are now being called to answer? Another question around the second P, pain. What is the new promise that you need to make to yourself? And that's a really important one when we're going through challenges and we're not trying, but the situation is causing us to understand ourselves differently. And then the final question here, how does it feel to sit with uncertainty, ambiguity, and change? How can you allow yourself simply to be with what is? So I'd really encourage you, spend some time thinking around those questions. Now, they're not the type of questions that your school improvement advisor is going to ask you. They're not the type of questions that your governors are going to ask you. They are the kind of questions that a coach will ask you, or if you're listening deeply to yourself, just that inner wisdom will arise and say, hey, I need to ask myself some different questions here. If I'm to really, really harvest what I will say is the gold from the difficult experience, no matter how hard it seems at present. And then we come to point of view. Point of view then is when you've touched base with your purpose. P is when you've gone through the pain, not gone through, when we travel through it, I would say. And you've engaged with the questions to help you understand yourself better and the situation better. Then point of view is where we then look back and we say, what have I learned through this experience? What convictions shape how I lead today? What values have become even more key and absolute for me as a result of this experience? And what we know is, I'm sharing this with you, as one of our key tools that we use, but also there's a report that came out a couple of years ago based specifically on the coaching that we provide for school leaders. It was done in partnership with Leeds Beckett University. And what that report revealed, amongst a number of other things, was that leaders who reconnect with their purpose through coaching report higher job satisfaction. The report also reveals that they experience higher levels of personal and professional fulfilment. And that's for the reasons that I've already stated, is when you have a way of being that supports head teachers to connect with their purpose, then what you're doing is ensuring there's a greater alignment between the person and the role, greater levels of resilience. That's also what is supported through the reflective practices that we engage our school leaders with. It helps individuals understand what resilience looks like for them, because resilience looks very different for each of us. And that's because we all have our own backstory. We all have our own backstory that comes with us when we step into headship, when we step into school leadership. And therefore, resilience looks different for each of us as well. And then what this report also found was that individuals had increased capacity to deal with leadership challenges for the very reasons that I've shared with you. When you have a coaching practice, when you have a conversation that isn't just a conversation that's not going anywhere, but has real purpose behind it, and the individual that you're working with understands how and what it is that you need to enable you to grow, to enable you to become more of yourself, then that capacity to lead well, to be the individual that you want to be, that becomes more prescient for you. And so I just want to end here. I showed you, I shared with you some questions from my new book, Learning to Walk in the Dark. And just to say that if you are going through a challenging time, I say if, but I just know the nature of headship. It's not an if, it is you are, you will be. You might have a season where maybe things feel a bit quiet and settled, but it's just the nature of headship, isn't it? That something will arise. And if you're looking for another way to keep hold of your why when the storm clouds are gathering, then I invite you to purchase a copy of Learning to Walk in the Dark. Because we know, don't we, that heads who lead from a clear sense of purpose and have a clear sense of direction, then we know what their schools feel like. We know what it's like to be around them. And as Director of Integrity Coaching, I want that for you. I want you to be able to be the type of leader who, when the sun is being hidden behind the clouds, knows and has a way to reconnect with that inner sun so that they can be the light that they need for themselves and the light that they need for others.